In this video, we're going to talk about the make or buy decision, which basically revolves around a firm trying to decide whether it should manufacture a product internally or purchase it from an outside supplier. So let's say that we have a company called Speedy Bicycles, and they manufacture bicycles and sell them. Now they're trying to decide whether or not they should make the bike saddle, which is the seat on the bicycle, so that's the bike seat. They're trying to decide, should they manufacture the seat itself? Right? They make an entire bicycle, but they could just buy that seat from an outside supplier. Right? So let's say that there's a supplier that says, you know what, we'll sell you bike seats for $10 a piece. So that for 5,000 saddles, for 5,000 seats, it would be $50,000 to just buy the bike saddles that they need to do their manufacturing. So now they're trying to decide, okay, we're going to make the rest of the bicycle, right? But we could just buy this seat portion and then just put it on our bicycle. So how do we decide whether we make or buy this saddle? So we look at it like this. So we know that the cost to get the 5,000 saddles that they need each year is $50,000 from that outside supplier, right? So now we have to say, well, what is the cost of making it internally? What is the cost of manufacturing this bike seat? So let's say that they go to the accountants and they say, hey, look, what's the cost of this? And the accountants give them a form like this. And they say, okay, here are all the costs. You've got some direct materials, you've got some direct labor involved in making these bike seats, and then you've got some variable overhead. As you produce an additional seat, there's some overhead attached with that, right, that's directly related to the saddles. But then we've got some general overhead that just has to do with the factory in general, right? So that's stuff like overhead that has to do with keeping the lights on in the factory that is going to exist whether or not we continue to manufacture the bike saddles, because we also make other products too, right? We make the handlebars for the bicycle, etc., etc. So we've got this general overhead, and then we also have some depreciation that's related to a machine that is specifically used to make the bike saddle, and that if we don't make bike saddles anymore, then we would just junk this machine. So now we can look at these costs, and if you add them up, you'll see that the total cost comes out to $70,000. So somebody might naively say, well, hey, look, it's $70,000 to manufacture these saddles, and it's $50,000 if we just buy them from an outside supplier. So why don't we just buy from the outside supplier? We save ourselves $20,000. Well, you have to look at which of these costs are relevant, right? And we had another video where we talked about relevant costs, and basically relevant costs are costs that are going to differ based on which alternative you choose, right? So if we choose, for example, to buy from the outside supplier, we're going to avoid the direct material costs, the direct labor costs, the variable overhead. We're going to avoid all those costs. But the allocation of this general overhead, right, like I said, that might have to do with just keeping the lights on in the factory. We don't save $20,000 if we decide that we're not going to, manufacture saddles anymore. We still have to keep the lights on in the factory for the other things that we do manufacture. So this general overhead, unless we actually have reason to believe that some of that $20,000 in cost would disappear if we stop manufacturing saddles, unless we have reason to believe that, we don't focus on this at all. We just ignore that, right? And now with the depreciation of this saddle machine, since this machine is used specifically to make a saddle, then we just have to say, hey, look, this is a sunk cost, right? This depreciation is a sunk cost. That has to do with a past purchase, right? Now, if we think that, hey, maybe we could use this machine to manufacture something else if it's not being used to manufacture saddles, then okay, that value, right, that opportunity cost, that would be relevant. But we're just assuming here that this machine can only be used to make saddles, and so if we stop manufacturing saddles, this machine is worthless to us. And we're going to say that it has no salvage value. Now, if we could sell it for a couple $100, then of course that would be relevant as well. But we're going to assume in this there's just no salvage value. Basically, so this cost is sunk. This depreciation cost is sunk, and so since we have no salvage value or alternative use for this machine, basically we can just ignore this as a sunk cost. Okay. So now we say, okay, really what is relevant here, in terms of continuing to make or not make this, what we really want to focus on is not 70,000. We want to say 46,000, right? Because the costs we would be avoiding, which are the relevant costs, right? The costs that we would be avoiding if we decide to purchase from the outside supplier our bicycle saddles, we would be avoiding $46,000, which is this right here, the variable overhead, the direct materials, the direct labor. That all is the $46,000. We would avoid that in order to buy from the outside supplier. So if you see it that way, it's actually cheaper, right? It's $46,000 to manufacture versus the $50,000 to buy from an outside supplier. So in this case, it would actually be a better deal for us as a firm to continue manufacturing these 5,000 saddles in-house instead of buying them from the outside supplier.